I always thought love was strongest when tested under pressure. I believed that when life throws its worst at you, that's when you find out who really stands by your side. That's why, after spending 25 years building my life from scratch, starting with nothing but a rented one-bedroom apartment in Houston and eventually running a construction company with 3 homes in my name, I decided to test the one thing I was never truly sure of: my wife's commitment. My name's Daniel. I'm 62. I've been married to Veronica for 11 years. She came into my life when I was already doing well for myself. At first, she seemed sweet, loving, supportive, even patient. I met her at a business conference in Atlanta. She was a hotel manager at the time, pretty, articulate, and quick to laugh. We hit it off immediately. I wasn't exactly young or charming back then, but she looked past that, or so I thought. We had a whirlwind romance. 6 months later, we got married in a small ceremony in Austin. She moved into my main house, the one near Lake Travis. Life was simple. She didn't work much after that. Said she wanted to focus on the home. I didn't mind. I thought she'd earned the right to relax a bit. I mean, what's the point of success if you can't share it with someone you love? But deep inside, something always whispered in my gut. Would she still love you if everything fell apart? I ignored it for years, until recently when something happened that changed everything. A few months ago, I decided to run a little test. I had my attorney draw up new documents that temporarily moved my properties and company shares into a trust, just for a short while. I wanted to see what Veronica would do if I didn't have the money anymore. But that wasn't enough. I needed something stronger. So I staged something. With the help of a trusted friend who worked as an oncologist, I faked a cancer diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer. I made sure all the medical documents looked real. I even started wearing loose clothes, skipping meals, and lying in bed most afternoons. I told Veronica about the diagnosis one evening after dinner. I'll never forget her reaction. She just stared at me, not a single tear, not a hug, not even a whisper of comfort. All she said was, "Oh." That night, she didn't sleep next to me. She slept in the guest room, and the very next morning I saw her scrolling through her phone, smiling, texting someone. I didn't say anything. A week later, she stopped cooking. Then she stopped doing laundry. I'd come downstairs and find her gone for hours. No explanation. One time I asked where she'd been, and she snapped, "Why do you care? You're not dying today, are you?" I kept quiet. 3 weeks into this little test, she started acting like I was already gone. She moved her jewelry into a separate safe. She asked me where the title documents for the house were kept. I pretended not to notice. Then came the final straw. I was sitting on the back patio, pretending to be weak, looking out over the lake. Veronica came outside, tossed her phone on the table, and went inside to grab a drink. The screen lit up with a message. I don't usually snoop, but curiosity got the better of me. The message read, "Any updates? When are you moving in?" It was from a man named Tyler. I recognized the name, her old high school friend. She always swore they'd never been involved. I didn't open the phone further. I didn't need to. I already knew. But I kept the act going. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, she came into the room, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "Daniel, I didn't sign up for this." She didn't whisper it. She didn't cry. She didn't hesitate. She said it like she was quitting a job she didn't care about. I just blinked at her. "What are you saying?" She crossed her arms. "I'm saying I can't do this anymore. You're not getting better. You're just going to waste away in this house, and I'm too young to be a nurse." I watched her closely. Her lips didn't tremble. Her hands didn't shake. Then she walked out. And just like that, she left me. That same evening, I received a text message from her. "I'm sorry, but I didn't sign up for this. You should call your kids. They can take care of you now." That's when I knew. Veronica was never in it for love. She was in it for the comfort, the lifestyle, the title of wife that came with zero effort. But what she didn't know was that everything she thought she was walking away from was never really hers to begin with. And I hadn't signed the will yet. I was going to leave her everything. Not anymore. Now, things were going to change. I picked up the phone and called my lawyer, Mr. Harold Kent. I need you to reverse the trust setup and update the will, effective immediately. Harold hesitated. Is everything all right, Daniel? I looked at the phone, my face still cold from the breeze outside. She failed the test, Harold. There was silence for a second, then a soft sigh. Understood. That weekend, I invited my son Jason and my daughter-in-law over. They brought the grandkids. The house was filled with laughter and warmth for the first time in weeks. I hadn't told them the full story yet, but I could see Jason eyeing the empty closet in the hallway. "Where's Veronica?" he asked. I looked him in the eye, and just before I could respond, I heard the front door open. She was back. Veronica walked in like nothing had happened, wearing a bright red dress and carrying shopping bags. Jason narrowed his eyes. "Everything all right?" I stood up slowly, watching her smile like nothing ever went wrong. And then Veronica opened her mouth and said something that shocked the entire room. Something so unexpected, it made Jason step forward and clench his fists. She smiled sweetly and said, "I hope you told the kids that you were exaggerating. You're not really that sick, are you?" The room fell completely silent. Jason's jaw tightened. His wife, Emily, shifted uncomfortably. The kids, sensing something weird, paused their game and looked up. And me? I just stared at Veronica, wondering if she even realized the depth of what she had just said. She chuckled lightly, tossing her shopping bags onto the couch as if she hadn't just dropped a bomb in the middle of the living room. "I mean," she went on, "you do look fine today. Maybe the doctors were wrong." I didn't say anything at first. I wanted to see if she'd dig herself in deeper. Veronica sat down and kicked off her heels, then turned to Jason. "He's always been dramatic, your dad. Always needing a bit of attention." Jason didn't smile. "So you think he made up cancer?" She waved him off. "Not made up, just maybe he took it a bit too hard. People survive things like this all the time." "Funny," I finally said, standing up slowly. "You didn't sound that optimistic when you left." Veronica blinked. "Daniel," I cut her off. "You said you didn't sign up for this, remember? You walked out, you left a sick man alone." "I was overwhelmed," she snapped, suddenly defensive. "You were pushing me away, Daniel. You were moody and distant. What was I supposed to do?" Jason took a step forward. "Not cheat. That would have been a great start." Her head snapped toward him. "Excuse me?" "I saw the messages," I said. "Between you and Tyler, the kisses, the plans, the hotel receipts." Veronica froze. Jason looked like he was ready to throw her out himself. Emily stood and calmly took the kids to the guest room. Veronica looked around, desperate now. "Okay, fine. I made a mistake. Is that what you want to hear? But Daniel, I came back. I came back because I love you." "You came back because you realize the will hasn't been signed," I said coldly. Her eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" And there it was, that flicker of panic. She had counted on that will. She thought she had a safety net. I walked over to the fireplace mantel, pulled open the drawer beneath it, and retrieved the unsigned document, the one that would have given her control of 2 properties, the business and nearly $1 million in savings. I held it up and let her read the heading. "Last Will and Testament, Daniel Morgan." She stared at it like it was a ghost. "I was going to sign this," I told her, my voice steady. "I had it ready. I was going to leave you everything because I thought you loved me." Her face twisted in horror. "Daniel, please. You failed the test, Veronica." "I was scared," she shouted. "You don't know what it's like to watch someone you love fall apart." "You're right," I said. "But I know what it's like to be abandoned when you need someone the most." Jason stepped between us. "You need to leave. Now. She didn't move. I'm his wife. Not anymore, I said. Harold's already filed for annulment based on abandonment and infidelity. Her mouth opened in shock. You think I'd let someone who walked out on me when I was dying get to stay in my home? Live off my name? Veronica's hands trembled. You set me up. This whole thing was a trap. I nodded slowly. Yes. And you walked right into it. She lunged forward then, snatching the will from my hand and trying to tear it. Jason grabbed her arm before she could do it. I already made copies, I said, but don't worry, you're not in the new version. You'll regret this, she screamed, fighting against Jason. You can't treat me like this. I didn't, I replied. You did. Jason dragged her toward the door, and before he could open it, Veronica spun around and shouted something I didn't expect. You think this is over, Daniel? I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. You faked cancer. That's sick. And then she slammed the door behind her. Jason came back slowly. You okay, Dad? I nodded. I'm more than okay. But inside I knew things weren't over. Veronica wasn't the kind of person to walk away quietly. She was angry now, and desperate. That night I sat down with Jason and told him everything. How I'd never really been sick, how the trust was part of a test, how I needed to know who I was really married to. He listened quietly. Then he looked me in the eye and said, She's going to come after you. Maybe even take this public. I nodded. I know, but I've got nothing to hide. What I didn't know was just how far Veronica would go to destroy my name. The very next morning, I woke up to a loud knock on the front door. It wasn't Veronica. It was two uniformed police officers holding a subpoena. One of them handed it to me and said, Mr. Morgan, you've been accused of fraud and emotional abuse. You're being summoned for questioning. I stared at the paper in disbelief. Veronica had filed criminal charges against me. And suddenly, the game had just escalated. The police officer's words rang in my ears like a church bell in a quiet town. Fraud? Emotional abuse? I blinked at the subpoena in my hand as if it were written in a language I didn't understand. Jason, standing behind me in the hallway, stepped forward. Wait, what's this about? What fraud? The officer, a tall man with a shaved head and a calm voice, looked between the two of us. Mr. Morgan, your wife, Veronica Morgan, filed a report claiming you intentionally faked a terminal illness to cause her emotional distress and financial uncertainty. She also claims you misled her about your assets in an effort to manipulate her. Jason scoffed. So she's mad she didn't get the inheritance and now she's crying abuse? I raised my hand slightly, trying to stay calm. Officers, I'm happy to come down and answer any questions. I have nothing to hide. They nodded, and after confirming I wasn't under arrest, just being brought in for a formal statement, I agreed to go with them. As the cruiser pulled away from my driveway, I saw Veronica's car parked down the street. She was sitting behind the wheel watching. When we passed her, she gave me a smug little wave like she'd just won a game of chess. But she had no idea I was about to flip the board over entirely. At the station, the interview was straightforward. I told the truth. That I had faked the illness but only to test my wife's loyalty, and I had no intention of harming her. That she left of her own accord. That she had a long-standing emotional affair with a man named Tyler, which I could prove. That the will was unsigned and there was no financial deception because the trust documents were legally sound and had already been reversed. The officers listened, nodding, and one of them even whispered, Honestly, I'd have done the same if my wife did what she did. But the investigation wasn't over. When I got back home, Jason was already on the phone with our family lawyer, Harold. Veronica had also contacted a local reporter. The next day, a story hit a small-time gossip blog. Texas woman says husband faked cancer to manipulate her. It was all a test. They even ran a photo of her fake crying on the porch of some motel. It spread fast. Friends from church texted me. Old clients called asking if it was true. My construction company took a hit. People didn't want their homes built by a liar. I was furious, but I didn't lash out. I waited, patient, just like I'd always been in business. Because the truth? I'd already set the next phase of my plan in motion. Remember Tyler? The man Veronica had been texting, planning to move in with? Well, what she didn't know was that Tyler had a wife. And I had hired a private investigator weeks ago when I first suspected Veronica was cheating. The PI had photos, call logs, and messages. Everything. Tyler's wife, Margaret, was stunned when I reached out, but grateful. She had no idea her husband was messing around. We had coffee, shared stories, and then we did something even better. Together, we filed a formal complaint against Veronica and Tyler at his workplace, a private investment firm where affairs and conflicts of interest are very frowned upon. Tyler got suspended within 48 hours, and Veronica? Her credit cards, which were under Tyler's authorized user status, were frozen. She tried to check into a hotel, declined. Tried to eat at a restaurant, declined. She came banging on my door that same night. "You did this," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "You ruined my life." Jason opened the door before I could even get up. "No," he said, "you ruined yours." She shoved past him, pointing at me like she was about to explode. "You think you're so clever? Lying to me, humiliating me, getting my boyfriend fired." I stayed calm, sipping my tea. "You brought this on yourself, Veronica. You were in it for the money. You proved it. You left when you thought I had nothing. Because you lied. You don't test people like that." "Maybe not," I said, setting down my cup. "But if you loved me, it wouldn't have mattered." Her face twisted in rage. And then, without warning, she grabbed a ceramic vase from the hallway table and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. Jason jumped in front of me. "Get out before I call the police." "You're going to regret this, Daniel," she screamed. "I will make you pay." But this time I stood up. "No," I said, stepping closer. "You've already lost everything." And then I handed her an envelope. Confused, she opened it. Inside was a copy of the updated will. Everything had been left to Jason, Emily, and my grandchildren. Even the lake house she loved so much was going to be donated to a veterans charity. She stared at the paper in silence. The final nail. "Goodbye, Veronica." Jason held the door open. And this time she walked out, without another word. But just when I thought the storm had finally passed and I could get back to a peaceful life with my family, something happened that I didn't see coming. The very next day, Jason ran into my office holding a letter in his hand. "Dad, you need to see this." It was a court notice. Veronica had filed a civil lawsuit demanding spousal support and property division, claiming she was entitled to half of everything, even though she walked out, even though we had a prenup, even though she was caught cheating. She wasn't done yet. And now, I had to face her one last time. In court. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not the temperature, the air, the energy, the judgment. It felt like I was walking into the final chapter of a novel I never wanted to write. Except this wasn't fiction. This was my life. Veronica sat across the room dressed in all black like she was attending a funeral. Her makeup was flawless. Her expression was somber, and if I didn't know any better, I'd think she was the victim. But I did know better. Next to her sat her lawyer, a young, slick guy named Brent Wilkins, probably fresh out of law school, trying to make a name for himself by taking on emotional cruelty cases. He kept glancing at me like I was a monster. My attorney, Harold Kent, looked calm as ever. A gray-haired warhorse who had defended CEOs, veterans, and people like me who built something from nothing. Harold was never rattled. That's why I hired him. "Stay calm, Daniel," he whispered as the judge entered. "Let her make noise. We'll bring the truth." The bailiff called the courtroom to order. The judge, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses, opened the case. Veronica Morgan versus Daniel Morgan, civil petition for property division, spousal support, and emotional damages. Veronica's lawyer stood first. He launched into a performance worthy of a stage play. Your Honor, my client gave 11 years of her life to this man, only to be deceived in the cruelest way possible. Mr. Morgan faked a terminal illness to test her love, emotionally tormented her, and now seeks to leave her with nothing. We are requesting a fair settlement in accordance with Texas family law. My client seeks half of all marital property and monthly spousal support. I didn't react. I just stared at Veronica. Her eyes didn't meet mine. Harold stood up calmly. Your Honor, Mr. Morgan will present evidence that Mrs. Morgan abandoned the marriage voluntarily, was engaged in an extramarital affair, and only returned when she realized the will had not been signed. Further, we will present a prenuptial agreement signed before the marriage, excluding spousal support and defining clear property lines. The judge looked over her glasses. And this agreement is valid? Harold nodded. Signed, notarized, and filed. That made Brent squirm. The judge looked at Veronica. Mrs. Morgan, is it true that you left your husband during his reported illness? Veronica sniffled, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. Yes, Your Honor, but only because I was emotionally overwhelmed. He pretended to have cancer. Who does that to their wife? And did you have a romantic relationship with someone else during that time? Her lip trembled. I was confused. I needed someone to talk to. That was her answer. Not no, but I was confused. The judge took a deep breath and gestured to Harold. Proceed with your evidence. Harold stood and clicked the remote to the TV screen in the courtroom. Photos popped up. Veronica holding hands with Tyler, at a hotel, at dinner, kissing him on a balcony. Next slide. Screenshots of texts from her phone to Tyler, sent during the time I was supposedly dying. Once he's gone, we can be together. I can't believe how long this is dragging on. He's like a ghost that won't leave. He barely gets out of bed, but I'm stuck playing wife. Each message hit like a hammer in the quiet courtroom. Veronica's face turned pale. Her lawyer tried to object, but the judge waved him off. Then Harold showed a short video, one I hadn't even seen before. It was from the security cameras in my house. Veronica screaming at me on the patio. I didn't sign up for this, I'm too young to be a nurse. And finally, Harold handed over the copy of the prenup. The judge reviewed everything, then looked directly at Veronica. Mrs. Morgan, your claims are not supported by any evidence of emotional abuse or deception meant to cause harm. If anything, the court finds that Mr. Morgan attempted to verify the integrity of his relationship in a non-violent, private manner. You, on the other hand, engaged in infidelity and abandoned your husband during a period of supposed illness. Veronica opened her mouth, but the judge held up a hand. I'm not done. The prenuptial agreement is binding. You are entitled to nothing. No property, no spousal support. Case dismissed. Just like that. Boom. Veronica stood up so fast her chair screeched. This isn't fair. He humiliated me. He ruined my life. The judge was already walking out. As the gavel struck, the courtroom emptied slowly. Brent was packing his files, avoiding her gaze. She looked completely lost, like she had just woken up from a dream and didn't know where she was. I walked past her, calm and quiet, but just before reaching the exit, I turned. Veronica, I said gently, you didn't lose because of what I did. You lost because of who you are. She didn't respond. Back home, the sun was setting over Lake Travis. Jason and Emily had fired up the grill. The grandkids were playing by the dock. Life was simple again, peaceful. I sat on the porch, holding a glass of sweet tea and watching the orange sky. Harold had called earlier with one last update. Veronica had tried to sell the story to a major network, but no one bought it. Apparently, people don't sympathize with gold diggers who fail loyalty tests. I smiled to myself. Because sometimes, The best revenge is letting someone destroy themselves with their own choices. And this time, I didn't have to lift a finger, just a pen. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping revenge stories every week. We've got plenty more where that came from, so stick around. You won't want to miss what's coming next.